Ayubowan from Sri Lanka. Greetings, Saluti. It is my pleasure and privilege to speak to you. Thank you for inviting me. We face serious problems. We are all interconnected on one planet. We must unite to save the earth and ourselves. Let us act now together. Let us talk about sustainability and climate change issues, reducing vulnerability and increasing resilience using SUSTAINOMICS and balanced inclusive green growth. What are the critical global problems humanity faces? There are pandemics, unexpected shocks, poverty and inequality, resource shortages, energy, water and food, financial sector collapse, conflicts, many other things, and particularly climate change, which is the ultimate threat multiplier because it worsens all the other issues. Multiple threats are interrelated. Unfortunately, the stakeholder interests are divergent and our responses are piecemeal. We need robust, integrated, and comprehensive strategy. Let's look at the nexus of resource limits, inequity, and poverty, which is a source of major vulnerability. There is a concept called the ecological footprint of humanity, which is the sum total of resources that we use to support our lifestyles. In 2012, we needed the equivalent of 1.5 planets. By 2030, we will need almost 2 planets if we continue as we are. Who is doing all this consumption? There is the infamous Champagne glass, where 20% of the richest percentile of the world's population consumes 85% of all resources, and the lowest 20 percentile, 60 or 70 times less. There are 800 million people starving. Just imagine, 1% of the richest own more wealth than the remaining 99%. The 1% of the richest emit 175 times more greenhouse gases per capita than the poorest 10%. 2,200 billionaires gained 20% during COVID in 22, while billions went hungry. And global expenditures on armaments are almost 2 trillion. If you put these two panels together at the top, you will see that when the rich use more than 1 planet worth, where are the resources to have the poor? And that's why we have 75 years of broken promises since 1947, the UN Declaration of Human Rights. All 17 of the current Sustainable Development Goals were in that old document 75 years ago. What are the key concepts to move forward towards the 21st century Earth eco-civilization? In 1992, at the Rio Earth Summit, I presented the SUSTAINOMICS framework and balanced inclusive green growth path. This will help to reduce vulnerability, increase resilience, and help to implement the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The first principle is to harmonize the Sustainable Development Triangle for balance and integration. And this is especially important for resilience. We need economic prosperity to help the poor out of poverty, but we also need to protect the environment while we are getting wealthier, and we need empowerment and inclusion to balance the 3 elements. But unfortunately, poor leadership focused on financial aspects only is causing problems with our search for resilience and sustainability. If you look, there is a biogeophysical resource base which supports everything. There are productive economic assets like capital and labor and so on. And then you have the financial indicators, the stock market indices, economic growth rates, and so on. Normally, we have our head in the clouds. We are always trying to make these indicators look good. But as long as our feet are firmly on the ground here, and these 3 are aligned, I think we have a resilient system. But that is not the case. If you see first, asset bubbles have continuously separated financial markets from the productive economic base. Furthermore, poverty and inequality is a very ugly social bubble, so that high economic growth rates conceal the fact that there are almost 2 billion poor people on the planet. And of course, environmental externalities like climate change are separating us from the natural resource base. In 2008, one of these, the asset bubble, collapsed the whole planetary financial system. In 2020, the COVID, which is environmentally driven, a pandemic, a zoonosis jumping from animals to humans, also caused the collapse of social and economic systems. So this is very dangerous and not a resilient system. And if you look at how human beings have tackled these problems, you will see that trillions were spent on economic bailouts, mainly of rich banks and companies. Just 160 billion, that amount, on aid to the poor, and a few billion for environmental problems. World military expenditures, as I said, 2 trillion in 2020. So these kinds of priorities cannot help us to build a more resilient world. The second core concept is called climbing the mountain, and it is a call for empowerment of individual human beings to make us more resilient, which is that the climate change and sustainable development are mysterious. They're like a peak that is covered with clouds. As long as we keep climbing uphill, even if we can't see the peak, we will eventually get there. And many activities are obviously unsustainable, and we can stop it right now. Or we can turn off a tap, or we can switch off the light when we leave the room. We can stop deforestation and so on. We can do these things at the personal, at the city level, at the company level, and so on, and thereby build a more sustainable planet. The third core concept is actually in our own minds, which is basically innovation and fresh ideas. We need multidisciplinary approaches, not just a single discipline. We need to think in terms of global space scales, not just our neighborhood. Time spans decades or centuries, not tomorrow or the next week. Values. We need to replace unsustainable, unethical values in order to build a more sustainable planet. Transcending stakeholder boundaries is particularly important. We need civil society and business to work with government to ensure good governance and building resilience and protecting this sustainable development space. We must also break the unsustainable triangle. You have unethical social values, greed, selfishness, corruption, violence, and so on, which is driving human values. And that has caused a model of economic maldevelopment, which is based on unsustainable debt, poverty, inequality, and so on. And that has caused the environmental debt with pollution, depletion, and of course, climate change. And the less resources we have here, the more there are battles and wars. There were no weapons of mass destruction. All the wars are for oil, land, and water. And the sustainable development space is constantly shrinking. So we have to break this cycle. We need balanced assets to support sustainable development. We certainly need economic capital to bring us out of poverty, but we also need to protect our natural capital or environment, and of course, social capital, which is unrecognized, and that is the one that provides the resilience of societies, particularly against the disasters. They are built on personal networks and the invisible glue that binds society together. If you look at how environmental and social inequality can combine to undermine stability and resilience, this is a very simplified diagram. The present system is quite unstable in the sense you have a very narrow environment base because the environment is being destroyed. You have this glass which represents the rich at the top and the poor in the stem, the distribution of income, and any disaster that pushes can tip the glass over. If we broaden the environmental base, things become more resilient and a little more stable. This is called green growth, where we're trying to reconcile environment and economic progress. And finally, if we improve inequality and help and build the social side, then this becomes much more stable, and this is called balanced inclusive green growth. This is the most stable and resilient setup. And of course, the fourth concept is very simple. It's just implement, implement, implement. All these theories are fine, but we need case studies, best practice examples. I have some of them, and please get in touch with me. I'll let you have copies of those. Now, let us talk about balanced inclusive green growth, why we need to change the current unsustainable global system. Let's look at per capita greenhouse gas emissions on the vertical axis here, which is the environmental risk, the development level per capita income along the horizontal axis. Currently, the world is unbalanced. Economy, society, and environment is not well balanced. So poor countries are here, low emissions, but also low income. Rich countries are up here. They are emitting above the safe limit, but they are rich. And many middle-income countries are right here in the middle. So the first step is to find this green growth path, how to balance economy and environment so that we can at least say that we can have some economic progress without destroying the environment. And then we bring in pro-poor inclusive policies so that you have the balanced inclusive green growth path. And there are two different paths here. Rich countries can reduce their material use, but continue to have a very good life without becoming poor. The poorer countries need not follow the profligate path of the rich. They can find this tunnel. This is the BIGG path, so that they all come to this point at the end. And now economy, society, and environment are fully integrated on this BIGG path. Just to give you an example of food, here is a rich family. They have a lot of packaging and food waste going on in their homes. They can reduce that and have the same good lifestyle, but so actually come down along this path. But for this poor family, there is no question of cutting back on food. They have to actually increase their consumption along this tunnel so that they can grow out of poverty, but more sustainably. And just to mention also that there are other methods. I have formed an organization called SUSTAINOMICS in 2012 at the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit to appeal to young people so that millions who attend rock concerts and raves can learn the music of sustainability, and without listening to learned lectures, they can also contribute to sustainable development. Please join us. We have a Facebook page and so on. Producers. These are some of the most important people on the planet. I have lectured to CEOs and senior managers of some of the top multinationals in the world, BASF in Germany, Tesco, Unilever, OPEC, Sime Darby, Novozymes, biotech, mining, even the wine industry in Portugal. And they all agree on three things. First, sustainability and triple bottom line is the wave of the future. But resource use efficiency is the win-win starting point. This is the green growth that I mentioned, because when you reduce environmental resource use, you are not only saving the environment, but you're also increasing your profits because your costs go down. And of course, in the long term, ethical values are the key to long-term sustainability. So let me now come to the BIGG path for a sustainable society. We need to put sustainable consumers and sustainable producers in touch so that the sustainable product cycle, civil society and business can work. And eventually, if we can get this to spread throughout society, let us say traditional markets for old people, online markets for young people, and so on, we can have SDG 12, which is responsible consumption. Now, on climate change, let me also mention to you that there is this cycle that we have to break. Different socioeconomic paths have caused greenhouse gas emissions, which is driving the climate system through radiative forcing. And of course, the empire. The climate strikes back through climate change stressors, temperature and sea level rise, which is causing huge problems for human and natural systems, undermining the resilience. And that is going to affect our future development paths. So this is not a good feedback loop. What we have done is introduce two filters: mitigation to actually reduce emissions so that we are causing less radiative forcing. And the other one is called adaptation, where we are trying to block some of the climate stressors on human and natural systems. And the IPCC gives us a very good summary of all this. It says that climate change will cause great and irreversible harm, and it will affect the poor the most. And this is a major problem of climate justice, because it is the poor who had the least to do with causing the problem. But the solution is to integrate climate into sustainable development strategy, keeping in mind that climate action is only one of 17 holistic sustainable development goals. And that's what we do in our modeling. We reflect climate impacts and mitigation into the traditional sectors of the economy in order to get the attention of decision makers. And that's how we move along the BIGG path. Start with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We move towards the World Eco-Civilization, focusing not only on material consumption, GNP, but also human well-being, gross national happiness. And these SDGs are all adjusted to suit each country's needs. It's not a cookie cutter kind of approach, but it's a uniform framework. In Sri Lanka, I was chairman of the Presidential Expert Committee, which prepared a Sustainable Sri Lanka 2030 Vision Report. And we certainly are going for a thriving economy, but we also want a green environment and an inclusive society. We will follow, we have said, the BIGG path. Just a quick word on military expenditures, which is my favorite topic. I've been working on this for more than 40 years. If you look in 2021, $2 trillion was spent on military expenditures, and just 160 billion for development aid. So even a fraction of this, and we are now even closer to the threat of nuclear war. The doomsday clock is even closer to 12 midnight. Forget about resilience. If we have any kind of nuclear war, it'll set us back hundreds, if not thousands of years. So this is a real danger. We must back away from nuclear war, and we must pull back on militaristic activities. Just a final thing on personal choices, I would earnestly request you to harmonize oneself before harmonizing the planet Earth. We have our job satisfaction and work and all that, the domain of the mind, but we also need the domain of the body, health, fitness, and other things, and also our society and friends and community. That makes us balanced. This is the personal sustainability triangle, which gives us a happy, contented, and sustainable lifestyle. Watch out for potential surprises, because you have climate change, of course, but you have pandemics, resource shortages, conflicts, economic crisis, technological disruption. But innovative thinking will help us to build resilience in the dynamically changing world. So my optimistic final message is multiple problems exist. There are serious challenges, but we can solve them. We know through the balanced, inclusive green growth path and other methods how to build a more resilient future. We need to transform governance systems. We need civil society and business to work with government. And I'm sure the PAS can lead in devising 21st century paths for sustainable development in the world. Let me finish with the ancient Pali blessing from Sri Lanka. May the rains come in time, which is the environment. May the harvest be bountiful, which is the economy. May the people be happy and contented. May the king be righteous. So many hundreds of years ago, my ancestors knew about the sustainable development triangle. We are just trying to rediscover it now. My institute does a lot of work on public policy, research on sustainability. We also give awards and other things. We have plenty of publications. Please do get in touch. Stuti, thank you. Grazie.